A strong finish for the Florida Gators in 2024. Can they carry that momentum over into 2025? We're going to give you an early projected record for this team. Also, we will break down the 2025 schedule. We thought preseason that Florida had potentially the toughest schedule in the history of college football last year. We thought it was going to be really, really tough. It was a very tough schedule, don't get me wrong, but it turned out to be, not quite as tough as what we thought in the preseason. A big part of that was Florida State being terrible. That helped. There were some other teams in there that we thought were going to be a little bit better. It turned out to not be quite as good, but still, it was a tough schedule. So let's look at this 2025 schedule. And of course, we're just going to flip the home and away for the SEC. And then the non-conference does get a little bit easier this year. They're going to play LIU, USF on the road at Miami, and then they will play Florida State. So obviously, Miami and Florida State going to be tough matchups there. Florida State, how good is this team going to be? Are they going to bounce back from where they were this past season? I don't know. I don't know if Miami is going to be quite as good. So these are all winnable games for Florida, but it's a very respectable non-conference game schedule, and especially when you play two Power 4 opponents, you have to respect that schedule, and they do that with Miami and Florida State. And USF's not a bad Group of 5 team either. So if you look at the home and away, if you look at the SEC, they've only got 3 home games: Texas, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. They've got 4 true road games in the SEC, and then also, of course, they'll be playing Georgia on a neutral field. So they got to go to Death Valley to play LSU. They got to play at Texas A&M, Kentucky and Ole Miss both on the road, and then again that game against Georgia. So where the games are, I think, is actually a little bit tougher this year. Again, LSU is a really tough place to play. Texas A&M is a really tough place to play. It is good news, of course, to get Tennessee at home, but still, only 6 games at home for Florida this year, which is something you just don't see very often in the SEC. So let's go game by game. They'll open up with LIU on August 30th. Then they'll play South Florida on September 6th. So a couple of non-conference games. And then it's back-to-back road games. They're going to play LSU early in the season on the road September 13th. And then it's on the road at Miami on September 20th. So back-to-back road games there, and very tough games. I think if you're Florida, you'd like to split those two, honestly. I mean, if they can come out of those 2 games with these first 4 games with a 3-1 start, I think that's a successful start. But that, again, that might be their toughest back-to-back of the season, with LSU and Miami back-to-back, and it does come early in the season. So then they get their first bye week. Probably a good time for it before playing Texas, which is going to be a huge, huge game. You have Texas A&M on the road the next week. So, again, a very tough back-to-back with Texas and Texas A&M. At least that's not back-to-back road games, but still, that's tough. Then you've got Mississippi State on October 18th at home. A more winnable game before their second bye week. And then they've got 5 straight games to close out the season. They'll play Georgia on November 1st. Again, that game will be in Jacksonville. Then it's back-to-back road games again. So they have back-to-back road games twice on the schedule. And this will be 3 straight games away from home. Kentucky and Ole Miss back-to-back November 8th and November 15th, both on the road. Then they get to finish things out at home with Tennessee on November 22nd and Florida State on November 29th. So, that's a positive. You get those final 2 games at home. But, a lot of games away from home. It's going to be a very tough schedule. There are no breaks really there at the end. They play their 2 easier games the first 2 weeks of the season, and there's not really a break the rest of the way. Maybe Mississippi State will be an easy win. But, again, this is going to be a very difficult, a very challenging schedule. You've got 5 straight games to close it out. It's going to be very tough, just like it was last year. So how does it stack up with the other teams in the SEC? Well, the winning percentage from last year for this year's teams on Florida's schedule, they were 35-29, so a 55% win percentage for their SEC opponents, again, from last season. That's pretty good. This is definitely in the top half of schedules, at least conference schedules. It's right there tied for 5th with Arkansas. So, yeah, this is going to be a very, very tough schedule for Florida. They were able to manage that schedule last year and wound up having a pretty successful season. Can they do it again in 2025? Again, I think it's going to be tough with this schedule. Before we get to the projected record for Florida, I just want to let all of you know we do have a Florida channel. Great show every Sunday over on the Florida channel, clips throughout the week. So if you're a Florida fan, check it out, subscribe. The link is down in the description below. Florida was able to beat the projections in 2024. How about 2025? We're going to give you a very early projected record for this Florida team. And before we get to 2025, let's look back at the last 4 seasons. You can see our projection compared to their actual record. So in 2021, projected to go 9-3, they went 6-6. In 2022, projected to go 7-5, they went 6-6. And then in 23, projected to go 6-6, they went 5-7. So they were under the projections every single year until last year, 2024, projected to go just 5-7. They went 7-5, so they beat the projections by 2 games. Big part of that was like some of the teams on the schedule turned out to be not quite as good as we expected or projected. But do keep in mind, these are not predictions. We don't do predictions until well after spring football, of course. This is just a very early projection based off of our way too early tier rankings. So we're talking about the tier rankings that we did that are really just based off of last season, and then we moved teams up or down one tier or left them in the same tier based off of, you know, how much production, how many players they have coming back, what they added to the transfer portal, all of that. And Florida is a tier 2 team in our tier ranking. So here is the schedule. And again, Florida is a tier 2 team. You look at the scale that we use. So that means if Florida plays a tier 3 team, then that means they would have a 61 to 70% chance to win that game. However, if that game is on the road, then it drops to a 50-50 game. So that's kind of the way this works. We start with the easier wins for Florida. I think you've got 2 of them. Actually, no, we've actually got 4 of them. So you've got LIU, USF, Mississippi State, and Florida State. So again, I mentioned that this is based off of the tier rankings, which are based off of last season, and we were only able to move teams up or down 1 tier. And Florida State was in the very bottom tier of the Power 4 last year. So they were only able to move up 1 spot, and that was still enough for Florida, you know, for that game to be in the green. Now, do I think they have over an 80% chance to beat Florida State? No, I don't, because I think Florida State's going to be a lot better. And that's why this is not, you know, these are not personal predictions. It's just based off of our formula. So again, the formula says that is a win, a game in the green. Mississippi State, I think probably, I feel like Florida has a better chance to beat them than Florida State. That one I would probably put over 80%. Florida State, I'd probably put, you know, 70 to 80. I'd probably put it in the blue. But again, we use the same formula for every team, and that's where it comes out. So you got 4 wins there. Those games will be counted as wins when we do average all this out. You've got Kentucky in the blue. That game is on the road, so that one could be a little bit tricky. But again, they are high enough ahead of Kentucky in the tier rankings to where that game comes out as a 71 to 80% game. So we've really only got 1 game where Florida is going to be, I think, an underdog. You know, and they'll be an underdog probably in a few games, but I think like a clear underdog in a game that's going to be really tough for them. But it is a rivalry game. They played them tough last year, and that's Georgia on November 1st. And again, this is all based off of our tier rankings. Georgia is in tier 1, Florida is in tier 2. Texas is also in tier 1, but that game is in Gainesville. That's why that game is not in the yellow. It's actually going to be in the white, and that's where the rest of these games are. So half the schedule here, it's 50-50 games. You got LSU, Miami, Texas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. So LSU is also a tier 2 team. Miami also in tier 2. Texas is in tier 1, but that game is at home, so that's why it's in the white. Texas A&M, tier 2 team. Ole Miss, tier 2 team. Tennessee, tier 2 team. So you've got a bunch of games against, you know, evenly matched opponents, and that's half the schedule. Half the schedule is there, and I think Georgia's more of a 50-50 game. Again, neutral site. I think the gap, we saw it last year. Florida played Georgia really close. Georgia's not quite as good as we've seen in the past. Florida's on the rise. I would personally put that one in the 50-50 range, and then I would probably put Florida State in the blue if I was just kind of mapping out these numbers. But again, this is the way it comes out in our formula. So what's the projection with this formula? Well, it's pretty good. 8-4 for Florida, so a little bit better than last year. Again, you'd have 4 wins, and that will leave you with 8 games. And if they split those 8 games, if they split these 50-50 games, and we throw Georgia and we throw Kentucky in there, they split those games, that's how they can get to 8-4. And I think that's very realistic. It could go the other way. If they lose a lot of close games to evenly matched opponents, you know, obviously they could have a pretty bad season. It could be a 6-6, 5-7 type season. But if they're able to win a lot of close games, able to knock off, let's say, Texas and Georgia, Florida is absolutely a playoff contender, and they could get to 10-2 and get into the college football playoffs. So I think that's a real possibility. The schedule is tough again, but I think it gives them a shot. There are enough winnable games on this schedule where they've got a shot to get to the college football playoff. But again, it's going to be very tough. And again, our projection 8-4 for Florida in 2025. What's your projection for Florida? Let me know down in the comments below. Again, just want to let you all know we do have memberships now available. If you want to get early access to videos like this, special badges, emojis, lots more, you can help support the channel, help us grow here. Link is down in the description below. You can check it out and see what all perks you can get if you do become a member. Again, if you don't want to be a member, if that's not something you can do right now, just please like, subscribe, do all those things. And thank you for watching this video.